They said it was going to be the crown jewel of Canada. A $1.2 billion tower rising above Toronto's skyline, luxury condos stacked to the clouds, a symbol of everything a booming city was supposed to become. And then something went very wrong. Not a fire. Not a collapse. Something far more dangerous, and far more quiet. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why what happened to this building is actually a warning about something most people in major cities around the world are completely ignoring right now. Toronto has been on a building spree for years. If you've ever looked at the skyline from the lakeshore, you already know what it looks like. Cranes everywhere. Glass towers everywhere. The kind of city that looks, from the outside, like it's winning. And for a while, it really did seem that way. The Pinnacle 1 Yonge development, one of the most ambitious real estate projects in Canadian history, was supposed to be the exclamation point at the end of Toronto's success story. Multiple towers. Thousands of units. A direct address on Yonge Street, which is one of the most famous streets on the planet. Investors poured in. Pre-construction buyers lined up. The buzz was enormous. But here is the part nobody was talking about at the cocktail parties and investor briefings. While people were celebrating the vision, the math underneath was quietly falling apart. Construction costs in Canada exploded after the pandemic. Labor. Materials. Financing. Everything that goes into putting a building in the sky got dramatically more expensive, and it didn't come back down. Meanwhile, interest rates climbed fast. The buyers who had locked in pre-construction prices years ago were suddenly looking at closing costs and mortgage payments that looked nothing like what they had originally imagined. People started walking away from their deposits. Think about that for a second. Someone saves tens of thousands of dollars. They sign a contract. They wait years. And then when the moment comes to actually close the deal, they look at the numbers and decide it's better to lose the deposit than go through with the purchase. That is how bad the math got. Now multiply that by hundreds of units in a single development, and you start to understand the scale of the problem. This is not just a Toronto story. This is happening in Sydney, in London, in Dubai, in cities across the world where people were told that real estate was the safest bet in the room. Pre-construction condo markets that were built on assumptions from a very different economic era are now colliding with a reality that nobody in a sales office wanted to explain to you. But let's go deeper, because the real nightmare isn't just about buyers walking away. The developers behind these projects borrowed enormous amounts of money to build. When sales fall apart, the financing gets complicated very fast. Projects stall. Timelines stretch. Some developments that were supposed to be finished are still sitting half-built, which creates a whole other problem for the neighborhoods around them and the cities trying to plan infrastructure around phantom populations that never arrived. In Toronto specifically, the condo market has seen prices soften significantly from their peak. New listings are up. Sales are down. Investors who bought multiple units expecting to flip them or rent them at a premium are now sitting on assets that aren't delivering the returns they expected, and in some cases are bleeding money every single month. Here is the part that should make you pause. For years, people in cities like Toronto, London, and Sydney were told that property was the path. That buying early, getting in, holding on, was how you built a life and built wealth. An entire generation organized their financial decisions, their career choices, and even their geography around that belief. And a significant number of those people are now in cities they can barely afford, in careers they don't love, waiting for a financial outcome that keeps moving further away. The skyscraper's nightmare is really just a very expensive, very visible version of something millions of regular people are quietly experiencing at ground level. You stay in the city because that's where the opportunity is. You take the job because that's what pays for the mortgage. You delay the travel, delay the life change, delay the version of yourself you actually want to be, because the whole structure you've built requires you to keep feeding it. And the building that was supposed to represent arrival, the glass tower with the impressive address, turns out to be fragile in ways that were always there but never advertised. Now here is something interesting that almost nobody is talking about in the middle of all this. While Toronto's condo market is under pressure, while investors are nervous and developers are renegotiating and buyers are doing the math all over again, something else is happening simultaneously. People are leaving. Not in massive dramatic waves. Quietly. Individually. People in their late 20s and 30s who look at the cost of living in a major English-speaking city, then look at what that same money gets them somewhere else in the world, and start making different choices. Portugal. Mexico. Colombia. Parts of Southeast Asia. Even smaller cities within Canada and the UK and the US where the cost of entry is a fraction of what it is in the flagship metros. The digital economy made it possible. Remote work normalized it. And the visible, public unraveling of the idea that a downtown condo was automatically a good investment gave a lot of people the permission they were waiting for to stop chasing the expensive version of the life they thought they were supposed to want. This is not about running away from something. It's about doing an honest calculation that the culture around you was never going to encourage you to do. What does it actually cost to live the life you want? Not the life that makes sense on a LinkedIn profile. The actual one. The one with space, and time, and the feeling of not being squeezed from every direction. For some people, that calculation still points to Toronto or London or New York. And that's a completely legitimate answer. But for a growing number of people, the honest answer points somewhere else entirely. And the slow, public collapse of a $1.2 billion promise turns out to be the clearest possible illustration of why no single address, no single investment, and no single version of success deserves the kind of unquestioned loyalty that so many people have been giving it. The tower isn't finished. The story isn't over. Toronto will adapt, the way cities always do. But the people who saw this coming, who quietly did their own math instead of following the consensus, who chose flexibility over prestige and experience over address, those people are not waiting to see how the story ends. They already moved.